Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Professionals You Should Know. This show is about uncovering the journeys of professionals from different industries. And today, we have the accomplished and exceptional Yao Antwi Yaboa, who's a neurosurgeon. Thank you for coming on.
Pleasure, thank you.
It's a pleasure having you here. So, what is it that you do?
Well, I am a surgeon in the NHS.
Okay. What type of surgery?
I'm a neurosurgeon.
Wow. So, what is it? What is it like? What's your day to day? How does it work?
Oh, that's day to day. That's interesting. So on a day to day, I deal with people who have neurological disorders to some extent that may need some sort of operation to help that neurological disorder. So people may have had tumours or had problems with their spine. And as a team, we do operations on people to help augment or help repair or remove certain problems to do with the central nervous system, spinal brain.
How long does a normal? Well, I couldn't say normal, but how long does an operation take?
The real answer is an operation takes as long as it has to take. It's a bit like saying how long is a piece of string.
Right.
In general, no operation's the same.
Really?
So no, because people are different,
Right.
even more wildly, and people have different types of problems. So a back operation in one person, and it may be at the same part of the spine with the same kind of problem,
Yeah.
but one may be more difficult than another, or may take longer than another. So I know brain tumour is the same. So operations take as long as they have to. So complexity of the operation can be to do with things like what the types of things you're doing with, like abnormal blood vessels or sensitive areas of the brain. So there's some parts of the brain that you can't even operate when they're asleep. You have to do it when they're awake.
Really?
And a few of my colleagues do that. I don't specialise in awake operations at all.
Wow.
I take part in them sometimes, but I'm not the main person doing those ones.
They're awake.
Yeah, you start the operation when they're asleep, but you wake them up for certain parts of the operation. Wow. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
I guess. I know.
So how long does so what's your longest operation?
The longest operation I've ever been involved with was probably nine hours.
Jeez.
Started it could it have been longer? Started in the evening and finished it
In the morning.
in the morning, yeah. Yeah.
And you always have to be very focused.
Yeah, I think it's like, I don't want to say it's like war, but
Right,
it's like in the medieval times when people had war, you'd have people put at the front fighting, and then maybe some people at the front would go back, rest a bit whilst other people fought and come forward again.
Okay.
So if you're the main, so you operate, you rarely operate alone. You operate with other people.
Okay.
Either another surgeon at your level, or assistants below you, or nurses, everything else.
Right.
So they change all the time. So if you do a 9-hour operation, your scrub nurse may change 3 times, or other people. The anaesthetist tends not to change. Actually, that's not true. They actually have another anaesthetist may come in, or there may be 2 of them doing the job, or one of them may take a break.
Right.
So during the operation, you're the one who's there. I have many colleagues who've done more very complex operations who've taken much longer than 9 hours. They've taken
Really?
longest operation that I've had in the unit that I was in was probably like nearly 20 hours.
20 hours.
Yeah. That wasn't. It just things are the way they are. It was a very complex operation, and they knew it was going to take a long time, and they had set it up to last a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So why neurosurgery? Or why become a neurosurgeon?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
I never wanted to be a neurosurgeon. I'm not one of those people who grew up wanting to be a neurosurgeon. My dad's a doctor.
Oh, really?
I think when I was 6, I wanted to be a stuntman. But then you start jumping places and you start hurting yourself. And then I loved computers so much, and I was like, just before I became a teenager, so I wanted to sell computers.
Computers?
Yeah, I thought it'd be fun.
All right.
Because my dad would take me to my dad loved computers, and he'd always take me to computer fairs or computer trade shows. And in the late 80s, early 90s, there was always like trade shows and stuff you went to for computers. And I still remember we bought one. I thought that was amazing. But on reflection, it was just because I spent time with my dad, I think. So that's why I like that.
Yeah.
But I got into medicine. I got the grades for it. I mean, it wasn't just me, my family, my sister went to medicine as well.
Oh.
And it's just something we did. And my father really tried hard to tell me not to do medicine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't understand it then. Well, because he came over this country, worked for the NHS.
Right.
And I think he just he didn't want us to have the same type of life he had.
Right.
Because it's, you give a lot of your life to your job.
I can imagine.
I think he wanted us to have like a more time. So I understand now where he was coming from when he said that. But it's something I did, and I loved medical school, and I knew I wanted to be a surgeon, and I wanted to do surgical oncology.
Okay.
So that really interested me. So a type of surgery that involved operating on tumours.
Yeah.
So that was what I wanted to do, and when you first start to train to be a surgeon, especially the old system which I'm from, not the new system they do now, you did all different types of surgical specialties.
Right.
Now it's more locked in. Now the trainings kind of they choose you for a certain specialty, and you go down a conveyor belt type of system.
Right.
But in those days, you did a bit of everything, and part of my training involved neurosurgery and spine as well separately. I really liked that, so. I got drawn to it, and I met some good. It's all about the people you meet as well. I worked in some very good places and with some very good people, and I kind of got drawn into it. Yeah.
Is there like a particular story that like reconfirms that this is that field that I love to be in?
Don't think so. No.
Oh.
If there wasn't one moment where I said I have to do neurosurgery,
Right.
Whatever. I don't have that. I didn't have like a Damascus type of conversion.
Okay.
Like Paul on the way to Damascus type of thing.
Wow.
I just did it as part of my job for quite some time.
Right.
And I realised that I loved what I was doing. I loved the types of patients. I loved the types of problems you have to deal with.
Right.
It was something and stuff that I could do as well.
Is there a particular patient that you did some surgery for, and then you was like, you walked away saying, oh, wow, like, I really made a difference?
So, yes, there was one, but this is after I was in neurosurgery for some time.
Right, yeah.
And I was working for a short period of time in the Midlands, and I won't say any names, but I was on call one day in this hospital that didn't do neurosurgery for children. It did just neurosurgery for adults mainly. And this child came through A&E who had a massive bleed in his brain. He had a seizure. His mum brought him in. And at that time, my wife was actually pregnant. And I was working away from home. And it was really hard for me working away from home. And wife was like pregnant with my son. And this boy came in. And he looked exactly how I imagined my son would look like. And it was really jarring. And his father was in the military working overseas, and the mum was alone. And I just remember, having that. It wasn't. It was just like this feeling that this could be your wife coming in one day. And we got scanned for the kid. He had a massive bleed in his brain, and got him to theatre, did the operation, stabilised him, and then he had to go to the children's hospital afterwards. And at that point, the neurosurgical unit for children was a little bit far away. So we stabilised him first, got him over there. And I never always wondered about that case because I never knew what happened. I actually left that area and went back home. Wife gave birth, everything else. Worked in London where we were living at the time. But then a few years later I went back to the Midlands and I was in the lift one day and came up the lift and the lift door opens and this woman just grabs me and hugs me.
Really?
And I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And there was a boy standing next to her. And she goes, I remember his name, but I'm not going to say his name.
Yeah.
She goes, this is the guy that saved your life when you were, when you had that bleed that time. And I saw him standing up and just like normal. Because I never knew what happened to him after that.
Wow.
I swear that's probably one of the best memories I had in the whole of neurosurgery. Seeing how well he was, and I only had like a 30 second. I was actually getting out the lift at that time, so I had to go to do something else. But that always hit me, and I always felt that was a nice reward from the universe to actually, because it was in the back of my mind
Yeah.
what happened to him.
Yeah.
But to see him just looking normal and no problems at all, and be able to talk to him for just 10 seconds, whatever, I've always felt blessed for that. That's probably my strongest story in neurosurgery.
Oh, I can see.
There's a few stories, but that's probably the best story that hit me like hard. And he did look like my son
Wow.
when he was a bit older as well. It's interesting.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really do change lives, and
I think you do. You don't win everything. Sometimes it's like catching a knife when it's falling. It's not, you can't always get the handle. And sometimes if someone's going too far one way, you try and help. It doesn't always work. Give people a chance if you can. Yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And so who do you feel that appreciates you the most? Of course, your clients is, one of they really, they really appreciate your services.
I think
Oh, well, yeah, go ahead.
I think people in general are appreciative, because I think when you need a neurosurgeon,
Yeah.
you really do need them, or when your family member needs one.
Yeah.
And people are always appreciative of that. But I think me as a human being who appreciates me more, it's probably my son and my parents.
Right.
When people appreciate me. But you have relationships with people. I think it's interesting because people talk about the government and doctors, and I think it's quite an interesting time we're in, where I think the government, as the government, I don't know if I should even say this, but I think the government in general appreciates what it means to have doctors. Okay?
Right. Yeah. Right.
Whether they appreciate the NHS in itself, and whether they appreciate what people have sacrificed, and through austerity we all went through, and what people did through the pandemic. I think there's a difference between appreciating and showing appreciation.
Right.
So I think on a human level, I think they do appreciate doctors. Being able to show appreciation, well, what can they do? Well, how much money do they have to show appreciation? And is it about money? Could it be about living conditions? Because one thing I learned, especially my father being a doctor in the 80s and 90s, is that the way we treated medical staff, not just doctors, nurses, everything else was different. Nurses had bursaries. You had accommodation for doctors in the hospital. You had all these things that were geared towards helping people do their job where they are. And a lot of those things have been sold off now. So the accommodation hospitals is not really something the hospital runs. Is run by another company. Even if it's associated with the hospital, it's a separate company. And there's limited spaces. They've knocked down. They used to have I grew up in doctor's accommodation in the UK when I first came to this country when I was really young, because my dad moved around a lot, and I grew up in hospital accommodation, and it was something that probably shaped part of my life where I am now, and that doesn't exist anymore. It's all private. You have to have your own accommodation. I think that's one reason why we struggle to get doctors in places like London.
Oh, I see.
So, as a wider answer to your appreciation, I think we don't have the systems involved to actually appreciate the people working the system well.
Right. I didn't even think about that as well.
But you'd have everyone would live there. Like you'd have it wasn't doctor's accommodation. It was for the medical staff. So maybe the physiotherapists who lived there, nurses, HCAs, whoever, people who worked in and around the hospital lived there. And they had separate family blocks. Even as a doctor, you go to work and you'd have an area that people would meet up, like the doctor's mess, which is not so much a big thing as it used to be. Yeah. And you'd have you'd have food provided for you, all the other stuff. So, one thing my dad would always tell me, it wasn't necessarily how much money you got paid as a doctor back in those days, but you had more because you were given more support. And there wasn't a question that you weren't valued.
Yeah. Okay.
because like it was part of the system to get people in work and working, so families stay together more. Because even if your dad worked all the time, well, everybody else's dad worked all the time. We took it in turns. We were brought up by all different types of doctors. Brought us up, yeah. Yeah, there's some memories I've suppressed. But
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so, do you feel that there's any kind of misconceptions to your role? So I know.
Oh, as a neurosurgeon?
Yeah.
I don't think people know what neurosurgeons do. I think they think it's all just, you prod around in the brain. It's more than that. I think it is essentially that. It is essentially that. But you're solving problems. Sometimes somebody has an issue, and even if you know what's wrong, like let's say it's to do with the fluid around the brain, cerebrospinal fluid, the best way to fix it is actually not that. It's not as simple as you plug one part of the body to another part. It's about we have all these different valves you use, all this types of things, and actually it's actually one of the more complex things to do in neurosurgery. And I've worked with some of the best people in the country who do that type of thing and seen how complex it could be. I think people expect this complexity to it, but I don't think they understand what the complexity can be. So some of the spine operations, the kit you use, the approach you try and do the operation from, it's not like it's a lot of other surgery. Okay, I'm going to get in trouble for talking about this. A lot of other surgeries that you have to do an appendicectomy.
Right.
You do it, and appendicectomies are basically the same. I've done a few in my time when I was training. Right. It's the same approach. Saying this, yes, there are things that you do differently if it's a burst or something else, but there's very simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
The thing about neurosurgery is sometimes the same operation can be very different each time you do it, depending on the anatomy and what you're doing. I mean, that's true in general for a lot of surgeries, but for neurosurgery it can be quite different. It's very challenging. It's problem solving. It's understanding some actual physiology and some medicine, which is not always as obvious. It's not just all the brains, other systems we operate on as well. So it's understanding a few things put together.
Yeah, you would never think that, because all we think about is our neurosurgeon. That's cool, and it's just again fixing some problems in the brain.
I have some very good friends who do things. So, have you heard of deep brain stimulation?
Yes.
Where you put probes in people's heads.
Yes.
So there's all these deep nuclei in the brain that we have an idea what they do. We know what they do in some extent.
Oh.
But there's a lot of experimentation in different targets to stimulate, switch off and switch off certain parts of the brain.
Oh, really?
And I have some very good friends who write papers on some of the targets and stuff, which is actually quite interesting. And it's part of neurosurgical functional neurosurgery. And if you ever watch neurosurgical memes, which no one does, obviously, they always make fun of the functional neurosurgeons, right? Because they're seen as like having an easier life, but it's actually very complex, and it's a very interesting field, which I didn't really think that much about, but I work very closely with people in certain hospitals in different sides of the river in London.
So where's the functional neurological? Is that when, like, so for example, someone has a stroke and you're helping them with their function, or what is it?
So functional neurosurgery is to do with operation, but one of the best ways to think about it is there are deep structures in the brain.
Right.
That we do operations on, and the functional neurosurgeons do a lot of that. So a lot of the appliances and stimulators you can use to switch things on and off. So you've seen the video online of somebody playing the violin whilst having the brain operated on.
Oh, I haven't seen that, but that sounds cool.
Yeah, so we went into wake operations.
Yeah.
And so certain parts of the brain which you operate next to, you'd want to not damage certain sensitive areas. We call them eloquent, but certain sensitive areas of the brain you don't want to damage. You would have to do part of the operation awake. But there's an operation which you can put probes deep into the brain, in some way. We call them nuclei, but think of your cortex of your brain's covered with neurons, and the middle of your brain is mostly just the fibers that connect them. Talk about grey matter and white matter. that's oversimplification. But
Right.
deeper down, there's some grey. There's like islands of grey matter within the brain. We call that nuclei, and those are the neurons inside deep down, and they're related to evolutionary, very older parts of the brain that affect certain functions, and one of them can be related to fine movements.
Okay.
And there's a video of somebody putting a probe in, or trying to test an area of the brain, and to see about to check fine movements.
Yeah.
And there's somebody who is a violinist,
Yeah.
but has Parkinson's or tremor or something, they can't
Yeah.
play,
Yeah.
or they don't play as well. And you can see them beforehand, and when they switch on the probe, how they can just play masterfully. Yeah, I mean there's loads of parts of neurosurgery that are still developing. Like there's talk about neuropsychiatry. So neuropsychiatry is a portion of neuroscience that was very very up and coming in the early part of last century, and due to some things that happened, it fell out of favour because the idea of controlling people and so on, or affecting people's moods and so on. But there's now people are now looking to ways to help things like depression or some disorders by stimulating some parts of the brain. And that could be something. And people like Elon Musk, who is Neuralink.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, I'm not sure about what he's doing because he doesn't really seem to be using neurosurgeons. He seems to be using robots.
Okay, fair enough.
Which is interesting, but they have targets which are probably identified by people with a neuroscience degree, I hope, and they have ways they think they can help control people's body. People have had accidents and may have a stroke or something, and trying to stimulate certain movements afterwards. I'm skeptical about a lot of the science behind that. The science actually is very good behind it. It's the implementation of the science and how you actually place those probes I'm skeptical about, but that's interesting.
Yeah. And you mentioned about like robots as well. And, I'm guessing that they could be more specific in their operation. How would you feel about?
It's something that is coming on more and more in surgery. We do robotic or robot-assisted surgeries.
Right.
And the thing I like about robot-assisted surgeries is the ability to do fine movements in small spaces.
Right.
There is some work for it in spine, and there's some centres in the UK that are doing it. In America, it's far more widespread, but this is still the beginning of people really getting to use it well and get to know it. I think in 10 years' time, there'll be in most centres, there'll be people doing robotic surgeries or endoscopic robotic surgeries. For the brain, I'm not sure about. You need to have the structure you operate in has to be rigid, has to not change too much, because you sometimes use navigation. By navigation, I mean you have fixed reference points that can tell you where your instruments are.
Right.
But with a lot of the robotic stuff, you have cameras at the end of the stuff, at the end of the equipment anyway.
Okay.
Or you have a camera port where you can see things through a camera, and I don't think that translates so well to the brain. When the brain, the brain is essentially, it's very soft. It's like if you think of a thick porridge.
Really?
Yeah, if you leave porridge out overnight, it's thick. That's the brain is not rigid, and it's not in its normal, not in a healthy normal state, and it's an environment which is all constantly affected by the pressures of the CSF and movement that changes when you breathe. There's all these things about the brain that shift and change as you move. So I don't see that working too well with some robotic stuff, but people who are very clever are working this out. I'm sure it will work out. But robotic surgery is interesting, but it's not everywhere. I mean, you read an article in the Daily Mail or something, and you think, "Oh, I'll have a robotic surgery."
Yeah.
It's not that big here yet, but it will be. And it's when you have a system like the NHS, it's hard to do innovative things.
Oh,
it's hard because you need to invest in innovation. Right. One machine may cost a few million. Okay, one robot used for surgery may cost a few million.
Really?
And then you have to think about it. If you use it, and you can't use it on different people, there has to be bits that you have to replace and reusable or be able to sterilise and so on. That has a cost to it, maintenance. there's the companies behind it, which are all private companies.
Yeah, of course.
And you have to work closely with them. You have to have a private partnership with a company that does it. There's a lot of logistical things need to be taken into account for that becoming widespread. It's somewhere like America, where the way things are paid for and reimbursed, it adds to innovation. So they have a lot of innovation there. So they have more access to robotic surgeries. I'm sure, but we will. I'm sure we'll lag behind it. But then it's not always the worst thing to be lagging behind in technology, because then you get the best. Technology always improves later on.
Yeah.
Like your iPhone 3G.
It's nothing now.
It was cutting edge then. Who wouldn't cut it now? So, so there's I think there's merit to the way we do things here. I think if we understand what our priorities are in healthcare, like the NHS, I think we can achieve a lot of things with the way it's run now.
Conception again is we always see you like, God, in a sense, like you can make miracle happen. You can make miracle happen.
And you see a lot for people with problems in their back, with back pain. And because you physiotherapy, you see all the time. And you see these people who they see nobody wants to operate. Why don't they want to operate? I think one of the most important things to understand is that back pain is quite complex.
Yes. Please.
Yes.
Please.
It's complex.
Please.
So like if I have hip pain,
so
if I got a bad hip or bad knee, even a bad elbow or shoulder, the orthopedic surgeon, who we always make fun of in neurosurgery, but they're actually really clever people and they're excellent people. I'm going to get discommunicated from neurosurgeon. I'm saying that orthopods are excellent people. Okay, maybe not people, but excellent surgeons. And they can take away your pain from those joints by removing the joint and replacing them.
Yeah.
The back is not that simple. We've done a lot of extensive operations over the years where we've taken away a lot of the joints in the back, replaced them, put all these devices in between the discs and putting screws in people's back.
Yeah.
And in some cases, for some specific things, it can work wonders. But in most cases, it will make a difference because back pain is multifactorial. You don't understand people's posture, their movements, their needs, how they live, how they sit. There's so many things. There's sometimes some back pain can be purely from the musculature. So you see you see the MRI scan, and you look at the MRI scan, you see the muscle in the back is so wasted, and it's like wagyu meat. So there's not much muscle there, and if they strengthen their core up, they may improve it. And that's hard though. Come on, spending 18 weeks exercising or have a 2-hour operation.
Thank you. Yes.
I mean, and one thing that I think most neurosurgeons would agree with, I hope, is that, an operation in the back is not really a good thing for back pain per se. Because we already said back pain is complicated, it's multifactorial. Back pain can be made worse by surgery. Especially initially, because we go through those muscles to do the operation. And you're not mobile. And anybody who has problems with the back knows that if you're mobile, your back is better. If you sit down and do nothing, you have horrendous pain. If you're doing too much, you have horrendous pain. But there's a sweet spot in which if you keep on moving just enough or doing certain things, your back pain's not so bad. And that's one of those things that it's a balance. I mean, I've met... One thing that does make a difference is weight. You meet somebody who is appropriate weight or very light and they have back pain. They're the most annoying people ever.
Really?
Because I mean, I say this from the point of view of somebody who's bigger with back pain. I don't have that. From a neurosurgical point of view, no one's annoying. But from that point of view, because you talk to them and they talk to you about their back pain. Go, when I do my 3-mile jog, my back plays up. Or if I say to myself, I meet people who would murder to be able to run for 3 miles or walk up a hill or do all these things. And so the people who have a lot of problems with the back who are skinnier, it affects their function to some extent, but they're still living life and doing things, and they're very active. Is when you have a sedentary lifestyle and you're a lot bigger and you have back pain, you see people who you're not that mobile before, they didn't get back pain. You were big before, but now you're bigger because you can't move as much. You still eat the same amount of food. Even if you eat less food, you're going to gain weight. Then someone like me says, lose some weight. I don't tell you how to lose weight. I don't tell you who to go to.
Yeah.
I have no answers for that.
Yeah.
I expect you to just do something, which there's been an industries built in this stuff
Yeah.
because it's so hard to do for many people. And there's nothing out there to help people. Even what are you supposed to lose? Lose fat, lose muscle. So if somebody lost 10% body weight, but half that was muscle, would that be good for their back?
No.
It's probably worse.
Yeah.
So there's a lack. We don't have the things in place. What I would imagine in the perfect world is you have a back pain clinic.
Right.
Where somebody like me has a small room somewhere and no one comes to me unless they've been filtered through first.
Right.
And you have someone go through their diet, their exercise, way of life. What do you do for a job?
Yeah.
Worst things are people who are carers
Yeah.
or people who look after little children.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're always bending over and doing things
Yeah.
which will put stress in the back.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's all these things that can be sorted out and could be sorted out before you even come and see someone like me.
This is what I'm always talking about. It's always preventative measures.
Best.
These are the things that I think clients, individuals need to understand, because sometimes, again, I see thousands of them, and what happens is they feel that they have the solution, and the solution is you guys. I want to get an injection in my back because I've heard that's good. It lasts for probably 3 to 6 months, but it will come back worse, and this is what I've always been seeing.
Yes.
And it's like, all right, then I will have surgery.
Yeah.
So this is what typically I'm seeing, and it's a quicker way out.
Yeah.
Whereas the way that I would do it is, again, we have services where you can see a dietitian, you can see a psychotherapist, you can see a physio, have a postural scan, all of those kind of things before it gets to that stage.
But this is the problem we have with the system we have.
Yes.
It's how long it takes you to see someone.
Yes.
Sometimes you prefer to being referred to neurosurgeon. It may take a while for you to get there
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Either you're not being listened to by a GP or GP referred you, but there's such a long wait.
Waiting list, yeah.
And by the time you get there, for someone to say, well, I can't help you lose weight and so on, because you've been on this journey, and you just wonder, that long waiting time, if they could be introduced to the kind of things you were talking about, how would it do? If there was a system in place where he's like, I have a problem with my back, it's really terrible. Okay, fine. Is it more of a chronic thing? Go through this. Is it an acute thing? Go through that.
Yes.
You know, getting people scanned earlier.
Yes.
Getting scans reported quicker.
Yeah.
Getting a multidisciplinary team of people, not just a room of surgeons and radiographers.
Yes.
But like, maybe have physiotherapists as part of that MSK topic. Then the way we have solutions in this country is quite patchy. Some areas you can get amazing physiotherapy.
Yeah.
But there's not much money spent on physiotherapy. Also, when people try to give some sort of physiotherapy to patients, I see sometimes the level of care the patients get is, here is a performer.
That is the worst type. I understand it.
And they have this exercises. And we live in the age of, okay, fine, do you know what? Why aren't there videos on this?
Yeah. But they are.
If they're freely available videos, why don't we all use it as part of our package?
I know.
All you got to do is one person's going to make it.
I know.
And then the rest of us rip it off.
I know.
And then you have this, okay, fine. Also, diet.
Yeah.
What do we know about diet? Okay, what do you, okay, fine. You want to lose weight, fine. How much do you eat? How many calories do you have? What's your basic metabolic rate? How can we do this? Nobody offers this through an official thing. The people, I've met, the reason why I know about this stuff is during all the back clinics I've done, you meet these golden people out of the thousands of people I've met who've had the answer.
Right.
And there's like 3 people that stick out.
4.
One is a woman who came one November to clinic and she had to lose 2 stones. She came in summer for the next clinic and she's lost more than 2 stones. I had to say to her, I've never seen one lose weight that fast before. How'd you do it? I said, that sounds a little bit unhealthy. And she had read some books. She was in so much pain, she was desperate. Yeah. She read some books on things like all different types of diet, fasting, and everything. And she said, there's so much information out there if you want to look for it. And she had said, I found something that worked for me. Yeah. You know, she ate like twice a day. She had this. I mean, it's not, and there's nothing I'd recommend. I can't recommend things. Yeah. I'm not, even though I'm trained, I'm not trained to understand the ramifications of this stuff. Yeah. And she'd lost it in such a healthy way in 9 months. And like, but she was very big. So 2 stone sounds like a lot, but it wasn't a high percentage of her body weight.
Right.
Yeah, but she had made this big change, and I found it interesting, and that led me to look at some of these things that I looked into, and I realised that we only offer part of the solution. I think physiotherapy, not just because you're here, is one of the most important things.
Thank you.
And they don't get it. Like, even if you had the surgery, okay, fine. You can.
You still need the muscles to support your body.
The muscles to support your body.
You have to.
In fact, I put it to you that if people had a lot of that stuff, we wouldn't even need the operation. Because one of the 3 remarkable people I met was, there's this gentleman who's a yoga instructor. And he's done yoga, he must have been like, he looked 40. Right. He's one of those people who looks 40 but was 60.
Yeah.
And his MRI scans, one of the worst MRI scans I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
His nerves, every single nerve in his neck that comes out the side was being pinched. So there's parts of the spine where the nerves come out called the foramen.
Yeah.
And all his foramen were just completely narrow and everything else. Yeah. And his spinal cord was being squashed.
Yeah.
And because it's something that happens slowly over time, the body adapts to it, whatever. And I was thinking, oh God, this guy's going to be in the wheelchair. Yeah. I hadn't met him yet. Going through his notes. And when he walked in, sat down, I tell you what, when you sit in the same room and you see people walk in, some people walk in very slowly, some people limp, some people have sticks, some people in the wheelchairs. He was the most agile patient I've had in my life. Walked in like a breeze and sat down in front of me. Even I was thinking, oh, I can't move like that. And I talked to him, and he had some neck pain, and that's why he was referred to us. And because his scan looked so bad, they made him come and see us. But he didn't need us at all. He goes, well, I only came because I was told to. I have a bit of pain, but when I do X, Y, Z, the pain goes away. Yeah. Oh, my partner massages my neck. I do this. And I was just thinking to myself, you shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
But you should be here to maybe teach people like me about what's possible.
Yeah.
And he did yoga, and I can't say yoga would do it for everybody.
Yeah.
But this is somebody who moves all the time. He wasn't heavy or big. He was somebody who was clearly healthy. Like you said, he was 60-something, looked like he was 40. And his scan was one of the worst scans I've ever seen, because this is one of the healthiest patients I've ever seen. So there's more to it than that. I think there's things like vitamin D levels, bone density, other things going on with people, fibromyalgia.
Hormones,
There's a big list of other things, and the surgery is a small part of the solution.
I completely agree, and this is what I always try to address as well. But,
But do you think people get adequate physiotherapy? You can tell them, okay, the GP should refer them to physiotherapists. They do, but there's a certain budget in that region,
and the quality as well. It's not the quality, the best.
But it's what I've noticed is that a lot of the physiotherapy out there, I've never met a physiotherapist who didn't care.
Okay.
Yeah? From my point of view,
right.
From my point of view, they care. They want to make a difference to all that stuff. Yeah. But there's a system which their work is designed for people who are of a certain mobility and health. So if you're better than that, they feel like they can't help you.
Yeah.
And they only get a certain number of time with patients to follow up.
And
So they only get like, let's say, okay, fine, you have how many sessions do you have? Fine, I saw them for 12 weeks and then it was done.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you needed 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe you needed 6 months, maybe.
Exactly.
And there's not enough money in the pot.
Yeah.
Or the money's not allocated in a way to look into that. And it's seen as an afterthought.
Yeah.
But how much, a lot of people I know, we pay people on pain teams, neurosurgeons, neurologists, rheumatologists, we all try and refer people to physiotherapy. Yeah. But let's say I have followed up with that patient 6 months later, I haven't had my appointment yet with physiotherapist.
Yeah.
So what can you do?
Yeah, no, that's a perfect point you touch on. And this is something that I always advocate to all my patients. I always tell them, the importance of it. And I always try to go into the earlier stages, try to prevent it. I'm always about preventing, because as soon as you get that early stage with anything, then the rest of the process is so much easier.
Yeah. But prevention is not valued much.
No, not here. No, not at all. Not at all.
And it worries me, because I think the quality of life, because you talk about the NHS budget, this or that. You know how much, if we spent like 3 times or 10 times the amount we spend on prevention, what could we achieve?
Oh man,
What could we achieve?
this is what I'm big into, and that's why I have like I've got a functional scanner, so it scans your posture and shows how you're moving. We've teamed up with dietitians again, so every time you come into our service, you should be able to speak to a dietitian, because again, physio is not the only thing. You need to make sure that you have your muscles working, but then your diet is working alongside that, and your mind is working alongside that as well.
What I found interesting was when you talk to people about diet. Nobody knows about diet.
Yeah.
Realistically, like in medical school, we have like a small portion of our curriculums on diet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it's based on the food pyramid, which is a bit weird.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
It's
that
not-
was I think that was
But
Mark.
there's a lot of apps out there that can help. There's a lot of tools out there, and we live in an age now where the whole knowledge. You can learn about neurosurgery if you want to.
Yeah.
You can learn about neuroscience, how the brain works.
Yeah.
You can learn about how things are structured. You can learn how to do operations. Some of the operations are online. They don't tell you how to do the operation, but they show you what's entailed in the operation.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have an operation, you can actually Google it. It's not always the best thing to do, because sometimes,
They get scared.
yeah, sometimes the quality of the source is important. But you can learn about anything now in this day and age. But nutrition is something that none of us really know about. Even the people, I talk to people who I thought were experts, and they talk about certain things, and I realize, oh, you talked about this, you don't know what you're talking about. And I think that one thing would change everyone's life.
Yeah.
If you were dramatically, but people have food is social. Food's about habit, what you do, what you eat. Think about the pandemic. Uber Eats went up a lot during the pandemic.
Yeah. And
I see those drivers everywhere now.
Yeah.
Sometimes at my door, they're listening to me. I'm not above anything. But there's and I see what people, and some foods make you sick.
Yeah.
Some foods give you pain.
Yeah.
And some either in the stomach, intestine, in the joints. And you just wonder if we have exactly the same budget we have now for health, but we increase our prevention, and that's in education. And you educate. Look, if you teach a child something, they know it for life.
Yeah.
If you go to teach children, okay, fine. Vegetables are good.
Yeah.
5 a day. Okay, fine. What the hell does 5 a day mean?
Yeah.
What is one piece of 5 days? So I have an avocado.
Yeah.
Okay, why stop at 5?
Yeah.
Is 10 a day so bad?
Yeah.
If somebody can eat 6 pieces of chicken or this and that,
Yeah.
but they can't eat like 2 pieces
Yeah.
of even not even fruit, of vegetables. People hate vegetables.
And it's even as well the timing as well when you're eating. So we have a system. So in the mornings it's supposed to be fruit in a sense, because it cleanses your body, and the heaviest meal should be at 1-2 o'clock.
But do you remember? Oh, I don't know how old you are. I'm a lot older than you. But I remember when I was younger, people would always talk about digestion. They would talk about, you've eaten now.
Yeah.
We're going to rest now. Or we're going to go for a walk now.
Yeah.
We're going to do this now.
This is
because
it.
you're digested.
Yeah.
And I don't hear people talking about digestion anymore. You just eat and you go. But in a 24-hour society now, you're eating at your desk.
Yeah.
Many times I do that in between patients sometimes if I can't
The time.
whatever or something else. And you just wonder if the simple things that we've forgotten as a society that could make things better. People ate terribly in the 70s.
Yeah.
Terribly. And I don't see anybody. If you're my size in the 70s, you'd stick out.
Right.
Okay? And people didn't eat that great in the 80s.
Yeah.
It just seems something happened between the 80s and now that people have changed. And not just the odd greedy person here and there. No, just normal people eating what is normal for us to eat. And they gain. I see that. And I worry about that because I think about my patients in a way. More people having strokes.
Yes.
Think about lifestyle. Because I remember the biggest deal when I was young was smoking.
Yeah.
People would smoke 60 a day or 80. I remember when I was a medical student, I'd meet people who smoke 120 a day.
Whoa.
And I don't even know how that's possible. But now, I think that they've done something good with the taxes, I guess, because if you're going to smoke even 80 a day, you have to be like a millionaire to smoke 80 cigarettes a day. But and I used to talk to people more, and people smoke maybe 20 a day now. People do age better now than they did in the 80s. I remember When I was a kid, if you were 50, you looked old.
Okay.
Or the 60, you looked very old. A lot of people now tend to look, I mean, not everybody, but there's enough people out there who are living well enough that they look younger as they get older. So I think there's some good things we're doing with diet and so on, but I think it'd be good if we had an idea for these people who are lost.
Yeah.
Instead of just me just saying we lose weight.
Yeah.
Being a hypocrite telling people lose weight.
Yeah.
And then, and they, okay, fine, they can leave my room, I don't know what they're going to do. And then if you see a patient, if you need them to lose weight, how do you, I mean, you got dietitians, I guess, but what advice would you give someone to lose weight?
Oh, there's many things. First thing I would always say is build muscle, and there's a specific way of building muscle, because obviously once you build muscle, it uses that energy for you. So I would say build muscle, but a nice and safe way. So I make sure that I assess all their body first, and then look at where they're at, and then give them a program to do, and then build on that program so it's safe and they don't get injured. Because as soon as you get injured, it starts the whole cycle again. You're mobile, and then you can put more weight and all those kind of things. So that's the first thing I do from a physiotherapy point of view. From a kind of like nutrition and dietitian point of view, or nutrition point of view, I should say, is meal planning. So it could be meal planning or structured meals, and the time in between meals, that's the most important. And even how you structure a plate. Is it protein and meat together? You know, I mean, protein
So you
and
look at
fats.
the macros there.
Well,
Yeah.
you have to, because this is what you're dealing with. So, you know, and even the combinations of things, combinations of foods, that's very important, because that affects digestion, and you know, and all the things that, again, how long does everything take to digest? So fruit is the fastest thing to digest. So in the morning, that's the first thing you do, eat fruit. But if you're going to eat fruit in the evening, that's going to be the worst thing, because now you've eaten things throughout the day, and then now the fruit digests, and the thing that you probably eaten hasn't digested.
Okay. So you've mentioned a lot of things there.
Yeah.
And what I worry about is when I have a patient who is, let's say, low income earner. Okay?
Right.
Doesn't use internet much, doesn't know much about learning these things. So a lot of these people who need operations, unfortunately, some are young, but a little bit older, not that computer savvy, don't understand stuff. I mean, I don't know what to tell them about a better way. I love what you said about building muscle, and I want to talk to you about that in a minute, because that's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's okay, fine. You mentioned things like fruit, talked about different macros like protein. In this day and age, when people may not have the skills of cooking like they used to, also access to fresh ingredients. And this last year, inflation in food is so high. And I see it in people's eyes that the people are suffering to an extent that a lot of people keep quiet about it, but people are really suffering. I mean, the cheapest foods are the unhealthiest foods. They don't belong anywhere in the macros. I don't even know what's in them. Okay. You know, or you have your protein, but it's fried in hydrocarbons. Okay. You know, so you know, how do you? It's something which I noticed that, especially when you work in different areas of the country, and especially London, there's a lot of disparity between different regions. And you work in a region where there's people who have a lower income, they struggle more. People have a higher income, and it's a certain type of educational background as well. They have the access to all these things, and they use it. And you see them, yes, someone who's heavy in this area is actually at the same time who's heavy in that area, because they have access to a group of people, friend group, who can tell them about these things. And they can. You mentioned fruit. I know a lot of people who can't afford fruit for their family. Because, like, look, they buy the fruit, the kids don't like them, and they go off. And I think that's where the answer to this is not somebody like us talking to them face to face, because everything you say there is valid and helpful. It has to be come from a young age in school, and be like, oh, this is what this means. That's what this means. And there's no such thing. I don't think there is such thing as really bad food. But what it is, we invert the pyramid. We eat all the bad stuff. It's easy to get. It's cheap. And all the other stuff is a choice. And you know, it's like, okay, fruit's important. not all fruit are the same.
Yeah.
Vegetables are very important.
Yeah.
Not all vegetables are the same as well, but
Yeah.
there's certain vegetables that affect your appetite, like
Yeah.
celery.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you eat celery, it attracts your appetite, things like rocket. So, and these are things that I've only learnt about because certain people told me about.
Right.
And I look at it, and I was like, well, it's just here to learn.
Right.
Why don't we have a wider knowledge about this?
Yeah.
Um,
It will come.
but I want to talk to you about muscle because I liked what you said about gaining muscle for these patients. And I think for back, because I'll talk about back pain because I kind of talk about what I do. I think that is one of the most powerful things for people to do. If you can improve your core musculature, because that's the thing that holds you up all the time. It doesn't take away your back pain, but I do believe it changes your back pain. The first time I met somebody who told me they did Pilates to help their back pain, it got better. It was a man who I'd call was a bloke. As soon as I say bloke, you know the kind of guy he was. Yeah. Bare gut, goes to the pub, a real bloke. And he said to me, he told me about Pilates. He goes, look, my wife made me do them. And why do men live longer if they have wives? I wonder why. But his wife made him do them. And he had done them for such a long period of time. He'd wait to see us for 9 months. And he came to us and goes, my back pain's not that bad now.
Yeah.
And he goes, why is that? Well, my wife made me do Pilates.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, oh, I just did it once or twice. She made him do it every single day for like a long period of time. And his core got better. He's walking better. He goes, yeah, I have a bit of pain. It's not as bad. I'm thinking to myself, you saved yourself an operation there. You came to the appointment just because it was there. You felt like you had to go. And in that time you had waiting to see us, something changed your life. And I think I never saw a scan afterwards. We didn't scan him again, didn't need to. But and there's a previous scan. So psoas muscles. You've got psoas muscles in front of the spinal column, but the mediplanus muscles, the muscles at the back of the spine, were all very weak and small.
Yeah.
And I think that...
And the postural muscles.
Yeah. And he had some things in his back that could explain his back pain as well. But just by changing nothing else apart from his stabilizer muscles, which took about 3 months for it to really kick in. And that's another thing. If you want muscles to grow, they take time to grow.
That's what I've been saying.
It takes... And by seeing these anecdotal cases here and there, I've seen some very interesting things about how back pain could be, not in everybody, not in everybody, but in some people, it could be augmented if they did things like gain some muscle. And it's the right muscles. I'm not talking about getting bigger biceps. I'm talking about these core muscles that nobody thinks about.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I say I give them a plan, because you need to be able to make sure that you're using those muscles. Again, loads of times I see individuals, even if you're looking at core muscles, they use their rectus abdominis, which is not the best one. You want to use the trans abs first, and then understand how to turn on your multifidus, because again, these are the muscles that you need to be able to control. So this is the thing that you do. And not only those muscles, even though those muscles are great, you also need to work the glutes, hips. They tie right into your back. If your hips are weak, 9 times out of 10, you will have back pain. Most people don't know how to work their glute muscles, and their glute max doesn't support their back. Their glute medius is the muscles for walking. Again, sometimes that's weak. So what's going to happen is you're going to do this waddle walk, which is going to impact your back.
Make it worse, yeah.
This is what happens. So
And
once you
once
you understand how you're using your body and the muscles that you need to be worked on, that's the only way you're going to make a difference and change.
And it's so cheap to do.
Very cheap, but it just requires work, and people don't want to work.
There. That was passion right there. That was good. I like that. Yeah. But it's weird. You don't. I think that's building those muscles are actually very, because people don't work with them much. You can do it at home with no weights, and make them stronger, and it changed your life.
I wrote a book called The Way to Walk, and literally it's a book of just making you understand these little simple concepts. Your toe, making sure you're working your toes, your quads, and giving you simple exercise that can be done at home. Easy.
Yeah.
Easy. But,
But do people want the truth?
No. They want the simple answers. That's why they come to you guys.
Well, not simple.
I know.
The risks of back surgery aren't
It's
simple.
ridiculous.
Yes, yeah. I don't want to minimize what I do because I do a lot of operations. I would never do an operation I didn't think. It's unethical for me to do.
Quarter equina will be really important.
Oh, yeah.
All
That's
those
it.
kind of, like,
Yeah.
stenosis,
Yeah.
cervical
And
myelopathy,
exactly,
all those kind of things.
those are all different. And those are all specific conditions that definitely need someone like me.
Yes.
But a lot of the problems you see in clinic, and if my family member were having those problems like back pain, even some sciatica,
Yes.
I'd want them to have some sort of change in lifestyle
Yep.
first, change in quality of foods,
Yep.
different types of exercises
Yep.
if they've got time to do that, and try those first before even trying something like this. And try types of painkillers to try and control the pain,
Yeah.
so they can do those exercises.
Yeah.
Because being on painkillers on non-stop for pain it's a road to nowhere.
Yeah.
But if you take the painkillers so you can mobilize enough, and I've not seen somebody who's what's the best way to put this? I've never seen somebody who's had some back pain that didn't have it improved by doing some sort of exercise. So, and it's not as simple. I've met people who took up cycling and it got better, and I find that's weird because a lot of people cycling makes their back pain worse.
Yeah, because they're sitting.
But then you see, but some people, and maybe it's to do with the glutes and the lower limbs, so on. Everyone's problem, even though they come with the same symptom, their problem could be something slightly different.
Exactly.
There's some, like let's mention like quarter equina.
Okay. Yeah.
Some people have a big disc that's come out that's pressing on the nerves.
Yeah.
But not enough to give them quarter equina syndrome.
Right.
But they may have like a large disc, so you can call it impending quarter equina syndrome.
Right.
And what I have seen is I've seen people go and get adjustments with a chiropractor that maybe shouldn't have and end up in a bad way after.
That's a full blown.
But that's why I find it weird. I find it interesting because I know you don't do chiropractic, but
I do.
You do fine.
I do manipulations.
The problem with I have manipulations is the only people I meet are people who've had a bad experience with manipulation.
Yeah.
The people who have good experience with manipulation never meet me.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do? We're gonna go to another part of the show.
Okay.
It's called rapid fire, but
my
it's
goodness.
not rapid. Don't worry.
Right.
It's just 3 questions.
Yes.
It's either pick a choice or yes or no. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So for our first question.
Don't like your smile at all. you have a cheeky smile, which means you're gonna ask something very cheeky. Come on. Let's be men. Let's be men about it. Okay.
So, do you have any experience in performing awake brain surgery?
I have assisted in performing awake brain surgery. It's something that's quite specialised for my oncology colleagues who do mostly neuro-oncology. It's not something I've done myself as a lead.
Right.
And I think there's a lot that goes into doing awake craniotomy. It's your team members. So may have physiotherapists there.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. If you're doing let's say you're operating your motor area for the hand or something else, and you want a way to test it. I'm busy operating. Yeah. I want somebody who can do the tests for me. So when I worked at, let's say, I'm not going to mention places I worked, but I worked at one place in London. The physiotherapist routinely came to the awake craniotomies. Not many places do awake craniotomies regularly, like every week or so on, but some places do it more than others. And you may have an occupational therapist there or speech and language therapist, depending on which part of the brain you're operating and what you're testing on. So I've been involved in quite a few awake craniotomies. I've done some of the operation as well myself, but working with people, other neurosurgeons. And we sometimes need a specialised therapist there to do the testing. So the occupational therapist may have like a type of scoring system or type of tests or cognitive test they want to do while we're operating. Or someone like you may be there with certain specific hand exercises you want to check and so on, and see and tell us if there's change in there. You can do operations where the patient's asleep all the time, but you can do special type of monitoring to check parts of the brain when you're monitoring them, especially if you're doing spine surgery. Nowadays it's becoming a lot more common now in spine surgery for us to use monitoring for operations we didn't use them for much before, because it's more available now. And when something becomes easily available, then you kind of think to yourself, well, if it's available, why would I use it for this type of operation? Yeah. Even though I don't think I need it for X, Y, and Z, but actually, I think in this case it may add more information. So there's big teams of people who aren't surgeons who are involved in some of the operations we do.
So for our second question,
Yes.
in your opinion, what do you feel is more vital in your field? A deep theoretical knowledge in brain surgery or hands-on experience?
Wow. Okay, I'm not going to answer it quickly. So places like Japan has the most neurosurgeons per capita.
Oh.
It's got like crazy amounts of neurosurgeons. I think it's like I don't know, but it's like thousands per certain million of population, and here we don't have that. So in places like Japan, there are some neurosurgeons that do mostly academic work and hardly much surgery at all. And that is very important in helping develop ideas of new types of operations. One of my favorite neurosurgeons is a gentleman in Japan who made an approach on how to get to part of the brain, and he got there by making he was doing another operation, and he accidentally drilled something he didn't mean to do, and then he found himself. I mean, you say this thing is, oh, you got scans, you know what everything is, but actually mapping things topographically and putting things together. It's like catching a bus somewhere. If you always go somewhere by bus, when you want to drive there, you tend to drive the bus route. Yeah. When actually you put on GPS, you're like, why did I do? You just go there, and it was like one of those moments.
Okay.
And he got this route going to part of the brain. He wrote a very good paper on it, and he gave a talk at some conferences at quite a few years ago, and I got to meet him. It was amazing. But there's a value to having an academic branch. There's certain neurosurgeons I know who spend 50% or more of their time doing academic work, and that's very important in some of the biggest questions we have. I mentioned earlier about our questions about certain type of bleeds and certain whether to operate on people or not to operate on them. I mean, a lot of the biggest trials came out of places like Cambridge and so on for people who are academic. So theoretical knowledge is important for all of us. It's very important for operating that you can do the operation. Sounds simple. But I think it's very important to have hands-on experience. But you can't neglect the theoretical work. Every single neurosurgeon who gets to a certain position has to go through an exam. And it's one of the hardest exams there are. And you have to do that. And it's very important. And it's quality control. It's not something you can just read in the book and learn. It's about doing the job as well. There's a lot of theoretical things in there. But it's extremely important that you have this called the FRCS-SN for surgical neurology. And it's extremely important in our quality control. And I mean, we do it in this country. There's an international version of it. But it's a very important way of keeping up the standard and keeping people able to do the work they do. So I can't just say, oh, it's more important than theoretical, it's more important than doing it. But for instance, if and also specific as well, if you do one particular type of operation, knowing how to do the operation so well is probably can maybe trump part of the theoretical stuff.
Right.
But in my field, the theory is so important.
Right. Okay.
So important, and it gets updated all the time. So you have to relearn some things, and you have to rethink about certain things about certain things we used to do, and so on. Yeah.
So you would go for theory if you had to pick a choice.
I think theory is important.
Okay.
You pass your theory test before you pass your driving test, right?
Okay. All right. I like that. For our last question, in preparation for complex surgery, do you find it more beneficial to rehearse the procedure mentally, or actually go through it practically or physically, step by step?
Okay. Everybody has a different process, and I've had the pleasure of working with some really great surgeons, and I call them great because of the outcomes, the way they operate in surgery, and their attitude. And there's one guy who was quite scary back in the day, who, as a consultant and as a very junior member of his team, he would sit in this room and just go over the operation in his head. And I came once because I had to say, oh, this is wrong. Something's wrong with this patient's potassium, blah, blah. He did this. He goes, yeah, I'm going through the operation in my head right now. Nothing matters. Talk to this person about it and it'll be fine. And I always remember that interaction because he was quite a scary person. It was even more scary when he was quiet. When he spoke quietly, it really made you tense up even more. And I saw that he had that process where no matter what the operation was, he went through it. And he'd go through it, what he'd expect to see, everything else would begin to end over and over again. And I think there is a power in visualization. I don't make a point doing it the way he did it, where I sit in a room where people can see me and do it. But I'm always thinking about, if I'm about to do an operation, I think about, okay, what if it's emergency? A lot of what I do is emergency surgery.
Okay.
And you have to get in there fast, and something may have deteriorated. And with the brain, it's like the heart. Time is like tissue. So it's take a long time, more the brain will die. So I was taught by certain people to do things in a certain way. And when it comes to doing some of these operations, especially if I'm going to do emergency, I will be going through it in my head. I'm like, okay, fine. This patient is this size. How do I get them on the table? How do I want the head to be? How do I want them to be shaped? Okay, fine. If I do this cut, where am I trying to get to? Look through the scans. Okay, which part of the brain am I going to get to? What's the safest access to this part of the brain? What's my objective? Is my objective to do this or do that? Do I want to say, obviously you want to save the patient's life, but how are you going to do it? How are you going to achieve that? So am I going to achieve it by taking this out? And also, if I take this much out, how much will it affect the patient afterwards? And will they still have a good chance of X or Y, Z happening? So there's a lot of going through the steps. It's also important that if I'm training other people, I try and get them to do similar things. I try and make them think about stuff and challenge them and talking about it. But I think it's very important to go through in your head. Even, let's say I'm alone doing something, I may start thinking about doing something. And there's certain emerging operations I don't think anymore because I say, it's not fair to say I don't think anymore. Yeah. But I've done it to such a degree that I know it. It's not even, it's in muscle memory of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to get through. Especially some of the emergency stuff you have to get in. And then there's sometimes some of the simple operations you got to do quickly. There's many cases I remember certain things happening. This once I've had to do certain operations on the ward because things were that bad. I didn't have time to get to theatre. I just remember that one or two times while someone up north and in a HDU on the ward, somebody was becoming very unwell and needed a drain to divert that fluid. And at night time, we shared theatres with general surgeons, and they were doing a big operation. And I was just, well, okay, fine. And I got the theatre staff to come upstairs, and we did the operation in the ward. And it didn't make me a very popular person for a while, but it's what had to be done. It's what had to be done. So yeah, you think about these things, and then when that's a good actually point. That case in particular, I needed a drill. And all the drills I used were these drills that connected to the port in theatres, like either an oxygen pump or whatever. And they had these hand drills that the orthopedic surgeons use. And the nurse was like, oh, but this fits onto this. I was like, does it? And so this piece I always use with the drills we use in neurosurgery fit on this orthopedic drill, which was just portable. And I did the operation. I remember saying to people afterwards, like, we can do this operation anywhere now. And that wasn't really something we can do. But that let me understand what was available to me, especially when I worked in some of the trauma I'd done, and you have people come in with certain injuries. Sometimes you have to do sometimes, especially if it's going to take a while to get theatre, some things you have to do before you go upstairs. So if you know these things and rehearse them, and that's part of what we do for ATLS, for a lot of emergencies, if you rehearse them in your head, it's better. So yeah, I do visualise a lot. I think it's important. If I'm doing an operation I haven't done in a while, I will definitely visualise. If I'm doing an operation which is complicated because the patient has a bigger tumour or has something different going on in their spine or has certain needs that it's a bit, as soon as something changes as well, something that's not typical of the operation, I go through it a lot. Even if it's a simple operation I do a lot, I will think about it. Like, let's say the patient is much larger than I expect. So, someone's much bigger than you expect, and I'll be thinking about, okay, what equipment do we have for this? This means that, well, how do I put the microscope? Where do I go? There's a lot of planning and a lot of visualization. I think that's a powerful tool.
Okay. Yeah, I like the answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Where do you think the healthcare industry will be without neurosurgeons?
Yeah. I think everyone plays their role. And when you need a neurosurgeon,
You really need
you
one.
mostly really need one.
Yeah.
I think there would be a higher mortality in trauma without neurosurgeons. So a lot of the general trauma we have in trauma, you always have neurosurgeons in a trauma centre. They can't be a trauma centre without a neurosurgeon in the building. Literally in the building at all times. So I think the death rate of young men would be higher if we weren't neurosurgeons.
Yeah.
I think some of the outcomes we're having with stroke now would be different. So we're having these operations now with stroke where you remove part of the bone around the head to help younger people with massive strokes as swelling they can get. Remember I mentioned earlier about the brain being smaller in older people, and it takes up more space in younger people. I think there's certain back conditions that have to be done by neurosurgeons, things like cord equina.
Yeah.
And I think we have such a better system than we used to, in that someone who has it has a MRI scan more easily.
Yeah.
So the access to MRI scanners now is so much better than it was 10 years ago, even 20 years ago. So there's more places that can do scans, if not at the early hours of the morning, till late in the day and early in the morning, even not, and sometimes during the weekend that makes a difference. So us being able to operate on people who have cord equina, and cord equina is a condition which people may not know, is where you have compression on the nerves right at the bottom of your spine, and these nerves not only control part of the nerves in your legs, but actually control your ability to pass water and ability to keep yourself continent of bowels, and also for sensation, your genitalia and so on. It has certain sexual functions. So if you're a young person and that is damaged, your quality of life goes to nearly zero. You're not continent of bowels. You're not able to pass water for yourself. You have to have a tube in your bladder at all times, which is not conducive to a good quality of life. You may have numbness in parts of your legs or in private areas. They may be able to have sex, and so this is something that if you miss this condition, these things can become permanent.
Yeah.
So it's something we really look at trying to operate on quickly. I think that's where we make a big impact.
Yeah.
But I think there's many things that we take for granted. So there's things that people don't know in neurosurgery, like diversion of the CSF fluid. So there's a lot of people who are born prematurely who may have had bleeds when they're younger and may need to have something called a shunt when they're younger. There's spina bifida and how we can correct some of that now. Some of my colleagues are doing operations before you're even born.
Really?
So they're in utero now. The operation called fetoscopy, and some very good friends of mine are doing that now. And that makes a difference that we don't think about, or don't really know about. It's not really advertised, and that can change someone's quality of life. You go from you may have a completely different quality of life going forward if you're able to have that than if you weren't. And there's so many things that neurosurgeons do aren't really highlighted. So, there's certain tumours we treat. There's improving the life expectancy of some of these tumours to some extent. I mean, some of the worst tumours we have are horrendous, and there's not much you can do from a surgical point of view to help that. But if we can do the best surgery you can, and then you couple that with the best type of chemotherapy that's catered to that patient, also the time in between surgeries and certain things, those little tweaks can help improve our outcomes, which are getting better. I think the emergencies we do, and some of the tumour stuff, and a lot of the stuff people don't understand with the paediatric stuff we do, that would bring this quality of life in this country back a bit. You have more people in wheelchairs and more people with horrible conditions they have to live with.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the pediatric part. Yeah, that's... Yeah, no, yeah, I completely agree. Okay, and I know we touched on this earlier, but is there anything else? So do you see your profession progressing or evolving in any way? So I know you mentioned about the AI, the robots.
Yeah, robotics. And
Yeah,
so. I think robotics are interesting. I think AI is interesting as well.
Yeah.
AI is interesting in diagnosing. So
Oh,
diagnosis of...
is this going on at the moment, or?
Yeah, there's a guy who I worked with who was my junior a very long time ago who's now has a company in America that does AI. He's been doing AI for a while now. That looks at scans and can diagnose things like strokes or even tumours, things like that. Before he focuses mainly on the brain because that's his expertise. But it's a big company. He was doing quite well last time I checked. Very proud of him. So that's coming through. That maybe not in neurosurgery itself, but for diagnosis coming up to us.
Wow.
There are certain things, like certain specialties in this country have started doing some interventions themselves, which radiologists would do. So removing some blood clots and so on, and treating aneurysms. A lot of the aneurysm stuff we treat can be done from within the blood vessel itself, called endovascular repair. And some neurosurgeons in America, it's 40% of neurosurgeons do that. Then 40% are radiologists and 20% neurologists do that. Here it's nearly 100% radiologists who do it. But we don't have enough manpower from the radiology side. So maybe something that some neurosurgeons could do. I think it's political, maybe that would happen here. I think there are treatments and other things coming up that we may not even think about now that may be helpful that neurosurgeons may get involved with, or like things, well, I won't talk about this, but there may be some fringe things that neurosurgeons get involved with, or maybe some treatments that didn't classically need neurosurgery before that may start needing neurosurgery.
Right.
But I think, in reality, I think a lot of surgery is changing to the point where there may be other therapies you can do other than surgery.
Right.
And so we're going to be, I remember one good example is cardiothoracics. When I was younger, it was sort of like, because they did all this like endovascular repair of the heart and so on, and heart valves, all that stuff, I thought that cardiothoracic surgery would disappear. It just changed and actually started doing a wider different things. I think that may be the same for neurosurgery. We'll see. But this country doesn't have many neurosurgeons. It has only has about 360 consultant neurosurgeons in the whole country for 60 million people. We have one of the lowest rates of neurosurgeons in Europe. Yeah. So there's a lot of room for the UK to expand neurosurgery.
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
How many neurosurgeons do you know? We're not everywhere.
Oh, fair enough. And going on from that, do you feel that anything is missing? So I know you're saying that probably more neurosurgeons should be qualified in a sense, or...
Yeah, I think it's trying to predict the future and trying to find what's best. It's actually really difficult. So I can understand why it's difficult for people to have a workforce plan in place that meets the needs for the UK as best as it could do. Right. I personally think, looking at the data and looking at other countries and what's provided, that we could increase neurosurgery by, you could actually increase it by overnight by, you can have more consultant neurosurgeons overnight by just making more jobs, because there's quite a few people who've done, I remember I talked about you have to do a certain exam to get a certain point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of us who've actually done that already, who are waiting for consultant jobs, because there aren't many in place. You could make all those consultants overnight, but then it's not just the surgeon you need. For everybody who's a surgeon, you need theatre staff. So it's all about what we have access to in the country. But places like Australia have more neurosurgeons per capita than us. Like, you name a country, they have more. Even some of the countries, so Eastern European countries, don't even think about they have more neurosurgeons than we do per capita. Yeah. We have one of the lowest in Europe.
Wow.
Yeah. Something like 5 per million. And I think it's some places like Germany, it's like 24 per million.
Wow.
And Japan, it's like 44.
Wow.
Japan's really hard. Like I said, they have loads of neurosurgeons in Japan.
Yeah.
But we could double the number of neurosurgeons in this country and still not have the same per capita as Germany.
Man, and anything else that you think could be changed or missing? Or?
I don't know. I think when you mention prevention, I think for some of the conditions we deal with, prevention would be good. I think it'd be really good if we could find out why people get some type of tumours, and that'd be nice if that could be prevented.
Yeah.
I mean, I love what I do, but it'd be nice if I didn't have to do it.
Yeah. Oh man, it's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been enjoyable for me too.
Having you here, soaking up all your knowledge. It's been.
So much.
Oh no, it's been fantastic. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Right.
Is there any way to reach you, or?
Oh God, no! I'm
No.
not. I don't want to be reached by anybody or anything. I don't really care. I don't care for social media. I think it's interesting. I think it's important that I'm not that public person. I mean, look, if people are into neurosurgery and want to know more about it, there's a website there's a group called SBNS, which is a society I'm a part of.
Oh, cool.
Society of British Neurological Surgeons.
Oh, cool.
They have a lot of information there. There's Google.
Oh yeah,
There's
yeah,
YouTube.
yeah.
There's amazing places in America. There's a Seattle Science Foundation that has very interesting videos on operation and so on. There's a lot of people out there who are less private than me,
Yeah.
who you can find online
Yeah,
and
yeah.
follow on their Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, but me, I'm not.
Fair enough. But man, I'm honoured to have you here. It's a pleasure, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you. Man.
And thank you all for watching.